John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, at J.F. McMullen on Twitter here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as the Eagles. So much this week, John, was Wentz coming back and then Jordan Matthews coming back. But we're at Thursday now, and that's typically a pretty important day for the injured guys, so we'll get into that and more as John McMullen joins us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, 97.3 ESPN. What's going on, Johnny?
Hello, Michael. How are you?
All is well, sir. As, Wentz took up a lot of conversation early in the week, then the wide receiver stuff. Jordan Matthews is in, but there's a couple of guys who are out, and it looks like Jay Ajayi was one of those guys, Darren Sproles. So you're feeling on a Thursday on whether we will see those guys on Sunday.
Yeah, kind of the same as really Tuesday. I mean, I think there was a reason this team promoted Josh Adams from the practice squad, and that's because they were concerned that both of these guys weren't going to be able to go Sunday for the game against the Colts, and it's looking more and more like that. These are the two most important practices of the week, Wednesday and Thursday. It's scaled back on Friday. If they can get back on the field, and again, Sproles is probably not even in the conversation. Doug Peterson admitted yesterday that he's farther away than Ajayi. So if Jay's able to get on the field, it might be a little bit of a chance he plays, but it's very, very doubtful. Unless you're Aaron Rodgers, if you're going to miss this much practice, they're not going to play you.
What is the actual problem with Ajayi? I mean, I just see back. Is there anything in particular that is wrong with Jay? Because when you hear back, you start to get a little concerned because back injuries are things that can linger.
Yeah, I mean, he strained his back. There's nothing concrete on what exactly that means. But as I said after the game, he said, my blank is blanked up. So it didn't sound good. And that's why I was thinking that Sproles would be ahead of him, but that's not the case. So it's not as serious as maybe he first thought. Did see him in the locker room yesterday. He's not talking because he's injured, but he was moving around pretty well. Didn't look in any discomfort or anything of that nature. So I don't think it's terribly serious, but I do think it's pretty evident that he's not going to play this week.
What do you think, Josh Adams is up, and that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to get a lot of playing time. It's just, precautionary, as you said, in case those guys can't play. But would he jump ahead of Wendell Smallwood, do you think, or is Smallwood and Corey Clement the guys that would get a bulk of the action if both Ajayi and Sproles were out?
Yeah, I would think it would be Corey and Wendell. I mean, they handled things pretty well against Tampa Bay when they were forced into action, Corey especially, but even Wendell had some production. I think a lot of it was, it was a strange game because the Eagles fell down by so much and then sort of made it a one-score game and kept clawing. So I don't know how much you can take from that. But those are the guys who are veterans, and they've been in there in the past, and you feel more comfortable. The one aspect maybe because of Josh Adams' size, he's a big guy. He's a 225-pound back. So if you want sort of somebody to pound it, maybe inside the red zone, I could see him getting some work there. But the majority is going to go to Corey and Wendell.
How much does that change the game plan, John? I mean, we talk daily, weekly about how Doug manages the running back by committee and his play calling with those three guys. Now this week, potentially, it looks like Ajayi and Sproles out, as we're talking about right now. How does that change how Doug is going to manage this game Sunday?
Yeah, I don't think it changes things very much because of the way Corey Clement has developed and what he's turned into early in his career. And it's kind of amazing, and I've talked about it a number of times. And when he came here, I mean, he was not asked to catch the ball at Wisconsin, and he did not look comfortable catching the ball here in off-season work during his rookie year and even in the training camp. And Deuce Staley sat him down, said these are the things you have to work on. Number one, they wanted him to lose weight to get more explosive. He did that. And then he had to work on his pass receiving and his pass protection. And he worked on it to the point where he was a star in the Super Bowl and a star catching the football. So you have to give him a ton of credit, and I don't think their offense changes much. And some people will argue it might even be better because some people will say Corey deserves more touches than the other running backs on this team. I'm not going to say that's necessarily true, but I'm also not going to say it's out of the realm of possibility that those people could be correct. He's at least sort of put himself in that conversation. The Eagles, respect him so much on special teams. That's one of the reasons they limit his touches on offense. And if he really is better than the other guys, you got to sort of say, we're sorry, Dave Phipp, but we need him more on offense, and that's going to happen this week. So it's sort of like a test, and I think if Corey plays well and has a big game, hey, I think he's got every opportunity to carve out a bigger role on this offense.
John, what was it about Corey at the draft that he was not drafted? I mean, was he out of shape? Was he hurt? Was there something that people didn't like about him? Was he a bad guy? I mean, what was it that held him back to make him an undrafted guy?
Well, I don't think people looked at him in this league and didn't think he was terribly athletic, and I think that's where the Eagles came in and said, you need to lose some weight, you need to gain some explosion, because there is a big difference between even a Power 5 conference like Corey played in Wisconsin. He was very effective. He was a tremendous runner there. But NFL teams don't care about your college statistics. They're trying to project you to the next level. And it's not to say they're always right, but when they are wrong, and it looks like they are wrong with Corey, it tends to be with work ethic, and it tends to be with guys who get a chip on their shoulder and say, you know what, I'm a good football player. I'm going to work, and I'm going to prove you wrong. And that has kind of defined Corey Clement to this point.
John, Nelson Agholor became the first Eagle in Eagles history to have back-to-back 8-plus catch games to start a season. How does the Matthews addition impact Agholor's production this week against the Colts?
Well, I don't necessarily, again, because of the way the game went and because of the way Nelson basically is the only receiver on the field with any competence, he's going to get some touches. So I don't look at those numbers and get all excited about them. And in a lot of ways, sort of the reason I didn't get excited about Jordan Matthews the first time he was here. He was a high-volume guy because he had to be, because the Eagles didn't have many receivers. Now, saying that, Nelson is the best receiver this team has until Alshon Jeffrey comes back. So I don't think it impacts it much. I mean, he's clearly lapped Jordan Matthews. Jordan Matthews is on the street in week 2 of the NFL season, and he's coming in week 3. Nelson's a big part of this offense. So I don't think Jordan being back will affect Nelson Agholor, other than the fact he's got to play more outside, and that could be an issue. But as far as trying to get people the ball, you want to get the ball to Nelson Agholor before Jordan Matthews.
John McMullen is with us, 97.3 ESPN.com, for all his Eagles and Colts coverage. And I want to get a little bit on this matchup here because this Colts team, they were terrible last year. But one of the reasons why they were terrible was they didn't have a quarterback. I mean, they were just, they made the trade for Brissett before the season. So they were pretty bad at that position. But is it just a matter of entering luck in there and they are a possible playoff team, or were they bad for more reasons than just the quarterback?
No, you look at this roster, and they're bad at more positions than quarterback last year. I mean, they were in they're in a rebuild mode. Frank on his conference call said, as a coach, you never use that term. You don't believe in that term. But from a talent standpoint, they needed to add significant talent at a number of positions, offensive line, pretty much the entire defense. They're not terribly talented on that side of the ball. So there were other issues than Andrew Luck being out. But the good news is Andrew Luck can mask a lot of those issues. I think Brissett is one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league, but he can't mask those types of issues. A healthy Andrew Luck can do that, and he can bring you to a win maybe when you don't deserve it, because he's that type of quarterback like Carson Wentz is when he's healthy, that can extend plays, make something out of nothing. So they're much more dangerous, no question about it, with Andrew Luck, but they have some issues.
Yeah, they're banged up too this week, John. I mean, I saw, much like the Eagles, they got a lot of key guys that aren't practicing. Yeah,
they do. T.Y. Hilton, most notably, who is by far their biggest weapon on offense, has missed practice both days this week. He claimed Wednesday that he was going to be able to play. But just like we talked about with Jay, it's difficult to play in this league if you don't practice at all. So that's something to keep an eye on. Anthony Costanza, the left tackle, Marlon Mack, the running back. A lot of impactful players, Jack Doyle, on their particular team are not practicing right now. And so it's something to keep an eye on Friday and see that final injury report.
We also know that last week they did a pretty good job of stopping Adrian Peterson. Are they a team that the Eagles are going to have trouble running the ball against? I know Peterson, there's a lot of debate whether or not he's going to have a lot of gas in the tank left this year, but he had a big week one. He did nothing last week. Was that because he's out of gas or because the Colts are pretty good against the run?
I think it's more column A than column B. I think that's what you're going to see from Adrian Peterson. I don't think people see the big name and expect big numbers. He's no longer that player. And the Colts, as I said, they're a work in progress on defense. And Leonard was AFC Defensive Player of the Week. He had a huge game, I think, with 18 tackles. He's their rookie linebacker. So they're slowly getting more juice on that side of the football, but again, I think it's a work in progress.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, is with us looking at Eagles and Colts. And when you look at the Colts with Frank Reich, different team obviously than the one that they've been the last couple of years. Are they going to be? Would you imagine that this is an offense similar to what we see with Philadelphia, where they spread it around and they have a bunch of different guys, or do they have a guy on defense or on offense that you think the Eagles need to key on?
Well, if Hilton's out there, he's the guy you need to key on. And there's no question about that. And it'll be helpful if he's not able to play because you have a big sort of downgrade from there. But they're not very explosive. They haven't been the first 2 weeks. I think they have 3 total plays over 20 yards passing so far this season. So it's not like they're having those big strikes down the field. And Doug Peterson admitted it is very similar to the Eagles' offense. So what that means is a lot of underneath stuff, a lot of yards after the catch, sort of a West Coast hybrid with some run-pass options, zone read looks, things like that, rather than, say, a Norv Turner offense or what you just saw in Tampa Bay where they're trying to stretch you vertically.
John, speaking about the Colts offense with the Eagles facing off against Frank Reich, is Jim Schwartz going to try and bring new stuff to the table this week to try and maybe throw him off with what he's anticipating the Eagles to do against the Colts? Like, is Schwartz going to throw out a new game plan? Is he going to go blitz heavy? Is he going to change anything up? What should we expect to see from the Jim Schwartz defense Sunday?
Yeah, he claims he's not, but he's going to. I mean, there's just no, they can say whatever they want, but Frank Reich knows everything about this team, and vice versa. So it works both ways. And you have to change some things up. If you do the same things, if you show the same tendencies, he's going to understand what you're trying to accomplish. And the same holds true for Frank as well. Difference is, obviously, Frank has got an entirely different coaching staff, so they have some different philosophies. But the default is the default, and they each know each other very, very well. And Jim Schwartz is going to do some things. I think, what's going to help the Eagles is obviously playing at home. They've been lights out at home. They're so much better defensively at home. It seems to be the pass rush here is sort of top 5 in the league, and it doesn't necessarily travel on the road. So I don't know if you're going to see a ton of blitzing, but part of that is because I don't think they're going to need to blitz, especially if Costanzo can't play. But I'll tell you what, Colts-wise, if you look at one thing, they are starting to head in the right direction with that offensive line. Ryan Kelly was a first-round pick at center. Quentin Nelson is going to be an all-pro. I never say that about rookie players. He's going to be an all-pro in this league. And Costanzo's a former first-round pick. And I think I said it yesterday on the show. If you can get a good offensive line in front of a good quarterback, that's half the battle in this league because it's easy. It's easy to play offense now. And that's sort of what the Eagles are trying with the great offensive line and getting Carson Wentz back.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. Like the fact that these quarterbacks can stand in there, they don't have to, they can't get hit anymore. And I liked Luck when he was coming into the league. I was a big Luck fan. I'm interested to see where he's kind of evolved to, and if he's the same guy. I've seen the little bits and pieces of him the first couple of weeks. He doesn't look like he's tearing it up or jumped right back in. So conversely, do you think that Doug Peterson comes out and we see Carson Wentz rolling out and scrambling around? And I mean, one of the things he talked about one of the things, he's not a running guy, but he improvises. He's so good at keeping the plays going, and that's something like, okay, Foles was efficient, and he did his job, and he made some big throws, but there's a lot of times where, I think the play that kind of defined Wentz last year was the one that started the whole thing off when he rolls out and he hits Agholor, and that kind of got the whole season going. That's the kind of play this team, lived on last year, and so many of those fourth downs and the big third downs, that's Carson Wentz. So do we see that Carson Wentz right away after watching what we've seen from how they're using Andrew Luck? Because Frank Reich, and I thought Reich said something interesting about how Peterson is a star and he doesn't even know it. You know what I'm saying? So these guys kind of know each other. They think a lot alike. So I'm wondering if watching the way that he's using Luck come back from injury will tell something about how the Eagles might use Wentz coming back from injury.
Yeah, I think it's going to be similar. I think the bigger issue is the rust part of it. I do think Carson, and he said it himself yesterday, he expects to be the same guy as far as extending plays. Now he's going to have the knee brace. There's going to be more limited mobility, but compared to Nick Foles, it's still going to be a big step up, and that's what you're looking for. That's what you want in this league, is what they call off-schedule offense, because it's really hard to go on schedule. It's really hard to go 13 plays and 80 yards without a big play. Because ultimately, at some point, you're probably going to get a penalty, whether it's a false start, a holding penalty that pushes you back and kills the drive. So it's really important to have that type of offense. It's what defines Aaron Rodgers. It's why he is the best quarterback in football. And Carson and Andrew Luck both have that type of ability. However, they're both coming off long rehabs, and Andrew's obviously played 2 games. This will be Carson's first game back, but Andrew was out longer. I think the rust part of it is a bigger deal than the off-schedule part of it, because that's who Carson Wentz is. He's going to extend plays. He's going to keep his eyes downfield, and he's a big, strong guy that can sort of ward off the pass rush.
John, we got Thursday Night Football. Now, this game looks like one of those typical Thursday night games, the one that they said, give us the 2 worst teams and put them on television just to say they're in prime time. But is that the case with tonight's game, or is there actual intrigue behind the Jets and the Browns?
I'll tell you what, I'm interested in it. I don't know about other people. I mean, there's still bad teams, but I think there's more interest in it. I think the Browns are at least competitive. They could be 2-0. They should have been.
The Browns are like the 28-win Sixers team.
Yeah, I mean, they just find ways to lose. I mean, they had the Saints beat. There's no question about it. And then they have all the issues with the kicker. And even the week before, they should have beat the Steelers and came back. And the Jets, of course, are the Jets. But now you have Sam Darnold in the mix, who looks like what I thought he was, and that was the top quarterback in this draft. And he's the guy the Browns should have selected. He's the guy that the Giants should have selected. So for once, the Jets lucked out, and I think they finally have a quarterback.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Mosher, McMullen, and Krause tonight at the Landmark Americana in Glassboro, as those guys, I believe, are going to be giving away a pair of tickets to the game on Sunday for Eagles and Colts, but you got to be there, so stop out to see those guys. And I'm sure plenty more, a lot of deeper talk on this game tonight with Mosher, McMullen, and Krause live from 6 to 8 on 97.3 ESPN right after us. And I'm sure you're popping off of here and heading over there.
You know it, my friend.
All right, man. Well, I always enjoy talking to you. It's always a good conversation.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.